Christian. He has taught at Thames College on the subject of the impact social media is having on society. He is married to Debbie, and they have 3 children. So join me in welcoming Vic Thames.
So good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be on this campus. I've been here several times, and I think it's a wonderful thing how Central Piedmont opens its campus to the community, which it does on a frequent basis. Thank you, Tony. It's election season, so I thought it might be good to turn to some topic about elections. And as I'm looking out in this crowd, I'm realizing there are a lot of people here who are involved in politics in one way or another. So I'm going to try to say some things here that will be beneficial to all concerned. But you all will be the judge of that. And in fact, I will invite you to debate some things that I'm about to say today in regards to our landscape, our political landscape. But I wanted to tell you that these days, as we think about what's important for candidates to express to the public, one of the things that we've centered on is this question. And we do ask a lot of questions. I should say, first of all, we always ask about stand on issues. We ask about how you're different from your opponent, what experiences prepared you for elected office. Is that you on that arrest report? And these are all valid questions, but I'm here to persuade you that this is the most important question of our times, and it's not asked enough, if at all. If you were elected, are you willing to compromise on your core principles when that is in the best interest of the people that you represent? If the candidate answers no, I would suggest that you need to find another candidate. And if the candidate answers yes, I would suggest that you ask for some examples. Let me hear some examples of how you compromised, knowing that it would cost you support. And if the candidate goes silent or even struggles to be convincing, I would suggest that you take flight immediately. Because, my friends, I believe that is arguably the most important problem facing America today. The Gallup recently did a survey on frustrations that the public has with with Congress, and we of course know that a lot of frustration is building about gridlock. I want to show you. Whoops, let's go back here. These are the reasons that Americans disapprove of Congress. You see things there. Party gridlock, bickering, not compromising, not getting along, and not making decisions, caring too much about politics, not country. Now, in all fairness to these politicians, didn't the people in this poll also elect them? Well, yes, they did. And wouldn't there be a price to pay if the politicians did compromise? Yes, there could be. In our culture, we call this flip-flop. Here's one that you will recall. George H.W. Bush said famously, as he accepted the 1988 Republican nomination for president, "Read my lips, no new taxes." And then he became president, and he raised taxes in a compromise with Democrats to reduce the national budget deficit. And then he ran for re-election, and his opponent, Bill Clinton, used the tax pledge to portray Bush as untrustworthy. Many voters bought that in 1991, and it appears that even more would be inclined to do that now. That's because fewer of us will even allow ourselves to change our minds. In June, the Pew Research Center for People and the Press polled 10,000 people nationwide. It found that Americans are more politically divided now than they have been in the past 20 years. Based on that poll, the number of people who express consistently conservative or consistently liberal opinions has doubled since 1994, up from 10% of the population now to 21%. So this helps explain the growing animosity that we see between Republicans and Democrats. In fact, according to the poll, many Republicans and Democrats are beyond disliking each other. People were asked, is the opposing party a threat to the nation's well-being? And 27% of Democrats said that this was true of Republicans, and 36% of Republicans said that this was true of Democrats. Here is a slide that charts the drift to the left and the right over the past 20 years. Areas in yellow represent the extremes, either consistently liberal or consistently conservative. But what I want to draw your attention to is the middle panel of gray, those panels. In 1994 and even in 2004, nearly half the population was there, open to a mix of different positions. But this year, the group had dwindled to 39%. And here's a better view of that. There it is. That's enough of the bad news. Let's talk about some good news. Let's talk about some solutions. For those who want an end to gridlock, take note. Nearly 80% of the people are still in that gray area, and they've neither migrated to the hard right or to the hard left. So I'm curious about this room, and I'd like to know how many of you would place yourselves within the gray area as opposed to the two extremes? Very, very good. Just practically most everybody in this room. So let's assume that these people and you are open to compromise. If that's the case, why are our politicians still so allergic to this concept? Here's why. The people who are on the hard left and the people who are on the hard right are far more likely to vote, and they are far more likely to contribute to a campaign. 58% of the bedrock liberals always vote, and 78% of the bedrock conservatives always vote. So the less committed you are to either extreme, the less likely you are to vote. And with this slide, you will see the same trend line. This time, the percent who contributed to a political candidate or to a group. So yes, it is a challenge. For now, politicians can pretty much ignore the people in the middle, and they can still get elected. In fact, some would argue, if they were candid with you, that they must ignore the people in the middle to get elected. But now that would no longer be true if the middle decided that it had had enough. So what if that happened? What if the middle acted on its frustrations and turned out to vote? There are two former members of Congress who posed that question to Charlotte earlier this month at an event co-sponsored by the Charlotte Observer. Some of you may have been there. They want to fix Congress, and they're trying to convince the public that it's not hopeless. Olympia Snowe is a Republican and a former U.S. Senator from Maine, and Dan Glickman is a Democrat and was Agricultural Secretary with the Clinton administration, as well as a member of the U.S. House from Kansas. These two are now co-chairs of a bipartisan commission on political reform. And nearly all the people on this commission are Washington insiders, coming from both sides of the aisle. There are people like Tom Daschle, Trent Lott, Susan Eisenhower, Victoria Kennedy. There are also some from outside the Beltway. One is Charlotte's own Molly Barker, who's founder of Girls on the Run. Our moderator for this event was Erskine Bowles. And Erskine Bowles, as some of you know, is a former White House Chief of Staff who now lives here in Charlotte. Now, I presume that Rotarians would sit through an event that's focused on political reform. And if I'm wrong about that, I'm already in a lot of trouble here. But we and our co-sponsors, Bank of America, honestly did worry that this topic might not be lively enough to draw a crowd in Charlotte. Our worry was for nothing Our response was so strong that we had to close registration for the event after 600 people signed up. And while this commission has 65 recommendations, the Charlotte crowd quickly focused on 3 big problems. And I want to go over those problems with you briefly now, and also tell you what I think you personally could do about them. And that's where the debate might begin. Number 1, stop making it harder for people to vote. Now, if I wake up on a Saturday morning and I decide that I want to go fishing, I can buy my North Carolina fishing license online, and I can be out at a lake and losing my bait within an hour. And while fishing is nowhere nearly as important as voting, at least not for most of us, voting, I think, should be at least that easy. And it's not, of course. And that's one reason why we have 51 million people in this country who are eligible to vote but not registered. There are other reasons too. But certainly, with today's technology, we could be doing a better job than we're doing now. But instead, many would say that North Carolina is now moving backwards. Now, I'm not going to get into the issue of voter ID here, because I know people are very divided on that, and they feel very passionate on both sides. And that's ultimately going to be decided by the courts. But I want you to look at what else our legislature did. Thank you. First of all, they shortened the number of days for early voting. They eliminated the opportunity for residents to register and vote on the same day. They restricted the use of provisional ballots by voters who turn up at the wrong precincts. And finally, they eliminated a civics program that helped high school students register for future elections. Really, we send our children to school to get ready for life, and then we scratch out the most fundamental civics lesson that we could teach them, that these children have the responsibility to vote as citizens. This is shameful, and I think you should suggest that your legislators should fix it. In fact, every legislator I have talked to about this has no reasonable explanation for it other than to say, well, I guess we went too far. The state of North Carolina went to court last week to defend all of these restrictions. It offered no explanation for discouraging young people from registering to vote. And at a minimum, I think you must ask your legislator to explain it to you. Number 2, reduce the influence of big money in politics. Now, there's always been money in politics, and there always will be. But a 2010 Supreme Court decision, known as Citizens United, now allows corporations, unions, nonprofits, and others to spend unlimited amounts in elections. This cash has come to be known as dark money because the groups that spend it do not identify their donors. And as of July, you may have noticed, groups have flooded North Carolina in the race for U.S. Senate with $26 million in dark money. Much of it right now is being spent in the form of negative attacks, and you're watching them every evening on television. But who is behind these attacks, and what agenda are they pushing? You can't know. That's not right, and people want to fix it. Right now, there sits a bill in Congress. It's called the Disclose Act. This law would force groups that spend at least $10,000 on election ads to disclose their donors within 24 hours after they spend their money. It sounds logical, but it's caught up in gridlock. The Republicans say the $10,000 threshold would allow individual chapters of unions to donate campaign cash undetected. Others say that it's an infringement on free speech, that people ought to be able to fund as much as they want to anonymously. Senator Kay Hagan is a co-sponsor of this bill, and Senator Richard Burr has voted against it. If you think that these groups ought to be identified and that we ought to be able to know who's spending this money, I think you should call their offices and tell them to get in there and find a compromise. Get past the gridlock. I've asked Tom Tillis' campaign for his position on the bill. I have not gotten a response. Number 3, we need to take the politics out of redistricting. In North Carolina, the political party in power gets to draw the boundaries of your legislative districts. And they draw those lines to keep their party in power. Now, this was unfair to voters when that party was the Democrats, and it is just as unfair now with Republicans in power drawing the lines. Here are the effects of this. Nearly half of the state's 170 legislative races this fall will feature only one candidate. You will get no choice of candidate. In Mecklenburg County, it's worse. 9 out of 17 races will be uncontested. The boundaries are so distorted in favor of one party that the other party can't attract a candidate to run. Now, one candidate makes it a lot easier for us to cover an election. But I say the voters are getting cheated. And here's what one wrote to us. I feel that my representative does not even try to represent me at all, since I am in the minority party in my district. It doesn't have to be this way. North Carolina could join 6 other states that delegate the job of drawing district lines to either nonpartisan or bipartisan experts. And now, I bet this will surprise most of you in this room. The North Carolina House approved a bill to turn redistricting over to a nonpartisan group as early as 2011. The bill had the support of both liberals and conservatives, including House Speaker Tom Tillis. Then it moved to the Senate, where the chairman of the Rules Committee let it die. His name is Tom Apodaca. I hope I pronounced it correctly. And he lives west of us in Hendersonville. And this is how he explained his opposition. We waited 140 years, meaning the Republicans, to have this redistricting power. I'm not ready to give away what we fought so hard to get. Now, I don't blame him for feeling that way, because there was a long, long period there in which Democrats were in control, and a lot of bad things happened in that period. But there are an awful lot of people who feel differently, and I'm going to introduce you to some of them. First of all, if you like this bill, contact your legislator, because it's going to be reintroduced in the next session of the General Assembly that starts in January. And it's called, or it was called at least, House Bill 824. They'll know what you're talking about if you talk to them. And these 2 men will be its sponsors. And it has growing support from others across the state as well. One organized effort is headed by former Charlotte Mayor Richard Benrick, a Republican, and former Raleigh Mayor Charles Meeker, a Democrat. They formed a coalition called North Carolinians to End Gerrymandering Now. And they've got the support of 2 Jims who are ex-governors, Jim Hunt, a Democrat, and Jim Martin, a Republican. They've also signed up, I talked to Richard Benrick yesterday, and they now have signed up 85 mayors across the state who are saying this is the right thing to do. Now think of what a difference this could make for North Carolina. Instead of having districts that are all Democrats or all Republicans, you see more districts with the parties represented in proportion to the population. Candidates could no longer run just on the basis of how loyal they were to one party or the other. They'd have to run on the basis of their ideas. And when they won, it would be more likely that those ideas were good for everyone, not just for one party. That would be democracy. I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, well, he's asking me to surrender my core principles. But I'm not. If you are a strong liberal, you can remain a strong liberal. If you are a bedrock conservative, you don't have to change. I want to introduce you now to 2 men who certainly did not change. In a speech about bipartisanship, Amy Gutmann, president of the University of Pennsylvania, pointed out that one of the great modern rivalries in American politics was between these 2, President Reagan and Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill. Reagan believed the government was the problem. O'Neill believed it could be the solution. Reagan once summed up his relationship when he wrote this in his diary. "Tip is a real Paul. He can be a friend while politically trying to beat your head in." But they accomplished great things together. In 1983, they found a compromise that shored up Social Security. And in 1986, they worked out the biggest and most complete overhaul of the tax code in post-war America. Tip O'Neill's son, Thomas, recently wrote this about these two men in the New York Times. "What both men deplored more than the other's political philosophy was stalemate, and a country that was so polarized from ideology and party politics that it could not move forward. There were tough words and important disagreements over everything from taxation to Medicare to military spending. But there was yet a stronger commitment to getting things done." In politics, sometimes opposites do and should attract. It's good for the country. And the sooner we come to understand that, the better it will be for our country. Thank you, and I'll be happy now to take your questions.